All right, welcome everyone to the Novel Prizes author series where I interview fantasy novelists. Today I'm talking to AC Cobble. He's the author of the Benjamin Ashwood series. That's, I think it's 7 novels. Is that right, AC?
Actually, hello everybody first. So no, it's 6 novels in the completed series, and then there's a box set out there and some short story collections that are set in the world. But it's the main story arcs are 6 novels, which is now the completion of that series.
Right on. Yeah, it's a big long one, and I enjoyed it all the way through. And it's easy to get transported and forget when things may have happened in the real world. But I think I may have started reading just after you published. So I'm glad to sort of get in on the ground floor. Have you done other series, other fantasy writing that others might know?
No, that's actually, so right now the Benjamin Ashwood series and related short stories and things like that that's the only thing I've published so far. I think we can get into it maybe a little bit more later, but I do have a new series coming out. It'll be June 1st. We'll have something brand new. Hey!
Right on.
Yeah, so far the Benjamin Ashwood stuff is all that I've gotten published.
Oh, terrific. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm glad to see that it's doing so well, at least from what I could see, right out of the gates. So, just to remind everyone, we have a Novel Prizes giveaway contest going on. It's an ongoing contest, and we'll a little bit later in this interview, I'll get AC to announce the winner of one of our bonus draws for box set of his books. It's the first 3 books in the box set, so that'll get everybody going. And if they want to dive in, they can do that. Especially if they win, they can do that. And if you want to know how to join or participate in the giveaway, they can do so using the links. They'll either be below or above, depending on where you see the video. AC, what led you to decide to write popular fantasy novels? What was your background and sort of what led you out of that into, I guess you're a full-time writer now, you said. So
yeah, so I've been a full-time for a little over a year and a half now. The Benjamin Ashwood book 1 first came out just under 3 years ago, and I'd started writing it about 3 years before that. It took me 3 years to write that first book, and they've been 6 months each after that. So hopefully I'm getting better and learning. But anyway, yeah, so about 6 years ago I started writing. And I think, as far as what spurred me to do it, I've always been a lifelong lover of fantasy, of course books, but everything around fantasy too, games, movies. That's always been, a big passion of mine since before I could remember. And I was a voracious reader, especially when I was younger, book a week, a couple books a week, maybe, that kind of thing. So it's always been, a passion, but not ever anything I thought that I would actually do. Then about, 6 years ago, as I said, when I first started writing, we had our first child, so I needed some new hobbies that kept me around the house. Then around that time, this is kind of a unique thing for me as far as my story. But I read some fantasy books that were just truly awful. And, in my head, I'm thinking, wow, even I could write a better book than this. And, honestly, I can't remember which books they were. I really wish I could. But there was 2 or 3 of them in a row where it's just like, gosh, this is really not very good. Why is this published? And so along with looking for a hobby, I started thinking, gosh, maybe I should write something better than this, and just started pecking away at the keyboard. It was very much just a hobby. For those first 3 years, only my wife knew that I was even writing a book. My mom, family, friends, nobody had any idea I was even working on it, because I really didn't think anything would come of it. It was just one of those, this is something I do in the evenings when, we're sitting around and the wife's in with the baby and things like that. So I kind of stumbled into it, to be honest. It was just a passion that I'd always had, and, got that motivation to start trying it myself. And for 3 years, it was very much off and on. I had a month where I was very excited about the part of the story I was in and worked on it every day. And then I'd go a month there we had a lot going on in life and just didn't get to it. So I kind of tinkered with it for quite a while. I spent at least a year and a half editing it and kind of tooling around and changing things. So just a passion project. And once I finished, of course, you've got a book. What do you do with it aside from share it? So popped it up on Amazon, and yeah, kind of people started reading it. Took a couple weeks, and all of a sudden I realized there's more people have downloaded this than I know. So some stranger somewhere is reading this and seems like they like it. So that was the motivation to keep writing.
Great. Yeah. So this didn't come out of any particular training or anything like that. It was something that was basically new to you, right?
Yeah, no, I've always been kind of a corporate business guy. Went to school for supply chain management of all things, which is totally useless when it comes to writing books. In case anybody's thinking about that, don't follow that path.
Yeah.
And then I went to work a couple different big, very large corporations. Got an MBA in the meantime, and I was working for a company, a very large oil and gas company. I'm down in the Houston area, so of course that's what you do down here. And I liked my job. I liked the company. There's nothing wrong with it. Had nothing to do with writing or books at all. But yeah, if you've got a chance to follow your passion, even if you like the job, it's better to be doing your hobby, I guess, full time. So.
Absolutely, yeah. You probably have hit the stage now where you're starting to run into new writers asking for advice. I mean, I'm one. Do you have any just general advice, something that you tell new writers that maybe you've had to answer the question several times? What general advice, or another way to look at it is maybe let's ask it differently. What advice would you give yourself as a new writer if you could go back?
Okay. I think, probably something anybody will tell you, any experienced writer will say is read. That's the number one thing you can do to improve your craft. So obviously reading in the genre that you want to write in, because you want to understand the story beats that happen in that genre. So, people want to see certain things when they're reading books. Not that you have to copy everything, obviously. I would not recommend that. But you want to understand, if it's a spy thriller you want to write, there's certain things that you need to have in there that people expect to find in a spy thriller. If you're writing a romance, there's certain things people need. And of course, fantasy, there's certain things people are going to be looking for. So you want to be familiar with those things. And you can deviate from them. It's a good idea to deviate from them and write something new, but you want to be intentional about it. And so that, hey, here's a standard trope, a standard thing that happens in these books, and I want to do something fresh and unique. Be aware that you're doing something different. And so you can kind of steer readers into that, and you can upset their expectations in a fun way, but know that that's what you're doing, so that when you do it, you can do it skillfully. And also reading outside of your genre is really important. A lot of times I think people get stuck. I love fantasy books. I read all kinds of fantasy books, but they've never read anything else. Well, there's things you can learn from nonfiction. There's things you can learn from other genres. Honestly, I'll admit I don't read a lot of romance, but if you want to have a heavy romance element in your fantasy book, you should be reading romance to figure out how it's done. And then you can incorporate that into your more standard fantasy tropes. If you have a character who's a spy, read some spy thrillers and figure out why people like that. And then you incorporate it with your fantasy world building and these things. So that's my number one piece of advice. Something else is it's kind of a balance between, you want to make sure you're releasing something good, but your book will never be perfect. So I think a lot of people have problems with either A, you finish your first draft and you're ready to publish it, but I'll tell you that first draft, nobody's ready to read it. You can make some improvements to that, and you should. So you want to improve on your first draft. So you want to improve the structure on it. You want to improve the copy editing on it. You want to get those typos, because there are typos. Even after the 10th draft, you'll have typos in there. So you want to go through and make improvements. But a lot of people get caught up in, fantasy, epic fantasy in particular. we have all know some famous names of people who are caught up trying to make a book perfect for the last decade. You've got, at some point, you have to lay down the pencil and get the book out. And so I think as you're going along, you have to think about that as it's not going to be perfect, but it can be better. And there's a point where you say, I've been working on it a lot. I've given it to maybe some beta readers, some friends, some fellow authors that I know. They've said it's good enough. And so you get it out there. Particularly with self-publishing and things like that, there's not a lot of harm in releasing a less than perfect book, but you don't want it to be so bad that that person who downloads it's never going to download anything from your name again, you know? So that's kind of a fine line, and be aware of that. And I guess the last thing I'll say for anybody considering being an author or a new author is, I mentioned beta readers, I mentioned other authors, is find some networks and get attached to some other authors. There's a lot of really good ones online. A lot of them are really big, so it's hard to make personal connections, but when you can, it's really valuable. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to getting feedback, when it comes to talking about the business, there's nothing to you more valuable as a new writer than other authors who write in the same genre with similar books, and they can talk you through things. There's some mentorship. SFWA, for example, as a mentorship for new authors. Things like that you can get involved in also to make some personal connections. One caveat I'll say about meeting new authors is you don't want to just meet anybody. You want to meet people who do know what they're doing, who do have some books out. You'll find a lot of times if you go to the local authors group, they may be very good at critique circles and things like that. But I can tell you, I'm down in the Houston, Texas area. You know, our local group, the first time I ever went to a meeting, I realized I was the only professional author there. And so, not to say that there's anything wrong with what they were doing, not to say there's anything bad about that, but if you're looking to grow professionally, you need to be around other people who treat it as a profession. If you just want to write some stuff, get your memoirs out, or just, you know, get a project out there so people can read it, that's totally fine. But if you do want to make it a career, make sure you're networking with people who are also trying to make it a career. That's my business side coming through. Right?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, if you're serious about it, then treat it seriously. Sure. Mm-hmm. Good. All right. Well, that's hopefully helpful. I know that I can certainly take away from that. Let's see. Do you have any? I don't know if you're ready to tell the public at large, but do you have any upcoming projects that you wanted to let them know about, something that they could be on the lookout for? And you know, I can put a link around in the description if you want, if you've got, if not, we can just put it directly to your site, but if you've got a link directly to the project, that'd be great too.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So for, you know, actually, I'm gonna sneak in real quick with a plug for myself since we're on here. One thing, Benjamin Ashwood book 1 is part of Amazon's Prime reading for the next 2.5 months. So if anybody is wondering who I am and hasn't heard of me or anything like that, you have Amazon Prime, which 100 million people do. So, you know, hopefully a few of you do. You can download Benjamin Ashwood book 1 for free for the next couple months as part of that Prime reading package. But then to answer your question about other upcoming work, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, the Benjamin Ashwood series is complete for the moment. I do have ideas for spin-offs. A lot of people ask me about that. They've got a particular favorite character, for example, who a lot of the people who read the series probably know who I'm talking about. But they, there is a spin-off in mind that I've got the ideas for, but I needed a little break. So that might come in the future. It might not. We'll see. But at the moment, I'm working on something brand new called it'll be a series called The Cartographer. And the first book in that I'm going to release on June 1st. Should have a pre-order link up very soon. Just waiting on a cover for that. But we should be getting the pre-order out and having that series available. It'll be a trilogy right now is what I have planned out. So every June 1st and then December 1st, then next June is the current timeline I've got in mind. And that series should be very appealing to fans of Benjamin Ashwood. It's a kind of an action adventure with a lot of humor thrown in. It's not it's a little bit sexier, I guess I would say, compared to Benjamin Ashwood. I'm definitely going for an adult audience, not adult, but an adult audience. But if you liked Benjamin Ashwood, I think that you'll like it, and I think hopefully it draws in some other fans too.
And it's set in the same world then?
No, so it's a different world. This Cartographer series is going to be set in a world that's sort of similar to 1750s colonial Britain, including the colonies. It kind of got some world-spanning travel. For Benjamin Ashwood fans, you know I like travel and like writing about travel. So they do move around quite a bit. But the idea is we've got kind of it's very loosely based. So I don't want people to assume it's a Victorian type novel. But it's based on this kind of 1750s colonial setup and world with some magical elements. And the idea is there are some sorcerers who contact underworld spirits and use them to do usually pretty evil things or mean things. And there's also some druids or shamans that contact life spirits that'll come into play, as kind of a balance to the sorcerers. And then, of course, we've got two main characters, a man and a woman, who are thrown into the middle of all of this, into this kind of rising power of some sorcerers, and they've got to figure out what's going on. The book starts off with a murder in an occult ritual. We've got to starts out kind of trying to solve what happened here. And of course, as these stories go, they get thrown deeper and deeper into the mystery, and have action and adventure, trying to figure out what's going on and fighting the bad guys. So.
Oh, that sounds good. That actually brought up another question. Have you had to do any special research for your writing? Now, being in a fantasy world, there's a lot more leeway, but I know some writers, like the first name that jumps to mind is Miles Cameron. I don't know if you're familiar with his. He's also a historical fiction writer, and so he has a bit better excuse, but I know he has a full period set of armor, and he actually traveled through Europe on foot in a simulated pilgrimage in the armor, just to see what it was like. Now, not everybody goes to that extreme, but can you think of any research where you've had to dive into that kind of depth?
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, he's an excellent researcher. Yeah, if anybody follows social media, you'll find out pretty quick he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so for Benjamin Ashwood, I did very little research. Basically minor stuff like Google searches on, you have little things that come up as you're writing, like, oh, they need a different type of sword, or they need what kind of poisons might be available, or something along those lines, where it's a quick Google search. You spend 10 minutes on Wikipedia. And so that was kind of the level I was at with Benjamin Ashwood. Because, as I said, I kind of dove in before I'd really thought things through. Mm-hmm. And that definitely ended up painting myself into a corner a few times where, you get stuck on, okay, well, I've set these rules of my world, but now I want to do something different. So with this new series, I did quite a bit more research. A lot of it researching, for example, East India Company, which was a very powerful merchant company, the original corporation, a lot of people would say. So read a lot of books on that, as far as, to get an idea, because that's also part of it is, as we've got these colonies, we have a company in the series that plays a significant role. So I wanted to understand how did that actually work in real life, and using that not as a direct model, but as an inspiration for the company that I created. And then also for the magical aspects, for the sorcery and things like that, I did a lot of research into Egyptian mysticism. So part of it was translations and things like that of Egyptian texts, like the Book of the Dead is the most famous one, but read up on a lot of Egyptian mythology, because a lot of that plays into how my sorcerers do their types of rituals. And also some more modern day people who also were inspired. There's a sort of a man named Aleister Crowley, who was in England, probably about 100 years ago, I guess was sort of his heyday. But he used a lot of ceremonial magic. And they called him the beast, and he's up to all sorts of shenanigans with drugs and sexual rites and things like that. So very interesting character to read about. But so I read up quite a bit on that. Again, not directly, there won't be an Aleister Crowley character in the book, but there's some inspiration on some of the things he did as far as these kind of ceremonial rituals and how my sorcerers in my book are able to contact and compel the spirits of the underworld. So yeah, I'd say there are about 10 or 15 books that I read specifically for research. Some of them, play in heavily, and some of them don't really play in at all. But you don't know until you read them, right? So.
Right. All good for background. So, all right. Well, let's if you want, let's announce the draw winner. So we have a bonus draw. I do usually 2, maybe 3 per week. It really depends on the schedule, leading up to a grand prize soon. But this week, the first bonus prize I'm giving away is the Benjamin Ashwood books 1 to 3 in a box set. And just before we got started, we drew the name out of the magic hat. So if you want to announce who won your first 3 books.
All right, yeah. So first 3 books, obviously, great entry point to this series. Whether or not you win, by the way, everybody, they're on Amazon. Yeah, the winner today is Beverly Bolin. So.
All right, thanks. Well, Beverly, make sure to contact us. Follow up with the email that you got when you joined the giveaway, and I'll make sure to hook you up with your prize. And so just a reminder for everyone to check out the links. We'll have links, I think, above or below, especially if you're interested in AC's upcoming projects or in the Benjamin Ashwood series if you haven't got started. And also, if you're new to the channel, if you're new to Novel Prizes in general, make sure to go over and join the giveaway. It doesn't cost anything. And then as you participate, it builds up some points and increases your chances of being drawn for great prizes like AC's books. So, and with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks very much for joining me, AC. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.